I practiced since I was young, long before I was a monk. When I was 7, I studied with the great Venerable Li of Asokarama. I was just a child, so he taught me to practice samatha by watching the breath, and to recite Buddho as I did. I practiced every day. After a few years, Venerable Li passed on, and I didn't have a teacher to help me progress. So I continued making the mind peaceful, but I was stagnant for 20 years. No wisdom to end suffering. The mind would get peaceful for periods, but when it wore off, I'd suffer again. So then I'd watch the breath to be calm once more. If we stop at samatha, we feel good and then bad, free of suffering only briefly. Finally, in 1982, I went to visit Venerable Dun. He taught me to watch my mind. Previously, I watched only the breath and body, but I didn't like watching the body. So I was instructed to watch what happened in my mind. I did what I was told. I was a government worker and worked Monday to Friday. I noticed in the morning, when I'd recall what day it was, the emotion would change in the mind. It is a mistake to think that Dhamma practice is shutting our eyes and ears and sitting in the forest. It is about studying the body and mind here and now. The forest is not required. A temple is also not required to have body and mind to study. They accompany you everywhere, and so can your practice. It is merely about seeing the truth of the body and mind. I watched my mind every day. Waking Monday, it was lethargic. Waking Friday, energetic. Whether lethargic or fresh, I knew it as it was. When I realized it was a long weekend Friday, I felt overjoyed. Does anyone share these sentiments? Sure. Don't pretend you don't. How about when we think it's Friday and we realize it's only Wednesday? How quickly the mind saddens. Suffering arises for us to see. This is how to watch the mind. At the lunch hour, we go to the cafeteria and see our favorite food. The mind is pleased. The next day, there is nothing we enjoy. We complain. Why not cook something more original? So boring. Our mind has aversion. Our job is to know that. Our job is not to know what food is on the menu today. It is to know what arose in our heart. We see a certain food and we feel a certain way. We smell a certain food and feel differently. Let's know our own heart. Such is mindfulness in daily life. No need to shut out the world. We practice wherever our life takes us, selecting food, know what feelings arise. We are happy with our choice, then disappointed with its taste. Sound familiar? Food looking great, but tasting poor. How does that feel? Great, right? I'm just joking. We feel terrible and complain about the cook. Our mind is disliking, thus we know so. Traveling to or from work, we get in the car and run into a traffic jam. We catch a red light. How do we feel? We feel frustrated, right? Then there's another red, and yet another. We start getting really annoyed. When we get greens, we feel glad. If the light turns yellow, we speed up, right? But then we see a cop and hit the brakes just in time. What a relief. Until we see that it was just security and not a cop. We should have known because they didn't have any donuts. Notice in traffic, when we are first at a red, we feel angry. But when we are 20th, not as much. At 80th, we are neutral to a green light. We won't be making that light anyway. I hope we are clear that Dhamma practice is done in real life. Don't underestimate its effectiveness. Those that honor practice in daily life have the best chance at enlightenment. How many hours can we do sitting and walking meditation? Most of our lives are spent doing regular daily things. Practicing only on a retreat or formally at home for a short while each day is not sufficient. How much of our time does this amount to? How much is then neglected in favor of meaningless things? I never neglected to practice. When I was a young employee without a car, I would practice at the bus stop. When crowded, I'd be thrilled to have so many fellow travelers. No, I'd know my disappointment. But when an empty bus approached, I would feel delighted, only to see that it's not in service. Delight quickly changed to anger. Silly me, why would it be empty in the middle of the route? The bus comes and I see happiness. Then it doesn't stop and I see anger. This is the easy way to practice mindfulness, suitable for busy modern people. We don't have time to sit or walk formally for long. Instead, we gradually get to know the changing feelings in our heart. Pleasure changes to pain, good changes to bad. It's non-stop. Just know and don't force it to be wholesome, happy, or peaceful. Watch the changes. Repeat after me. I'm going to watch and see the changing nature of the emotions. I'll watch regularly and contentedly. Soon you will see an endless cycle, happy changes to unhappy, good to bad. Both happiness and unhappiness stay briefly and then disappear. Greed, anger, aimless thinking are all brief and then gone. Let's keep seeing that everything that arises in the heart also disappears. Buddha taught it is the nature of all things to arise and fall. One day, the mind will see this conclusively and attain the first stage of enlightenment, stream entry. Here, we see that all things arise and fall, hence no permanent self. Practice mindfulness as I have described. Let's get to know what feelings arise and not resist any of them. Let's keep working at knowing when anger, thinking, pleasure, and displeasure arise.